I think we can start.
Yeah, we'll start. We'll start the session. Meanwhile, as everybody, with a slight disturbance as whenever somebody joins in, there will be a ping. Yes, welcome, ma'am, to our IXT Symposium session, or should I say the Interaction Design Symposium session, organized by National Institute of Design, Bengaluru. So the ideal aim is to create a forum for designers and mainly academicians, uh, somebody who is either pursuing a PhD or has already acquired a doctorate, and experts to discuss the future of design in context of emerging users and evolving technologies. And today at our fifth session, and we've recently completed a year on 18th May of our, since our first session. Today for our fifth session, we're honored to have you. Slight introduction for the participants about our guest speaker. Dr. Nagma Sahi Ansari. She's an assistant professor at the National Institute of Fashion Technology, Calcutta, or Kolkata, with the Department of Communication Design. She is a recipient of the Indo-Canadian Shastri and ICSSR doctoral grants for practice-based research on identity and co-presence in immersive media platforms, and has created an interactive VR artifact as part of her practice-based research. And one of her recent publications is about exploring the alternate work-life models in women-led craft enterprises and co-creation with AI. Today, we are really thrilled to welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sanana, for that introduction. So, I think I've just been told to sort of talk about my work before I begin with, the lecture or whatever, however that you want to take it. So really, really nice to see a lot of budding designers, just on the lecture platform today. So, hi, I'm Dr. Nagma. I recently completed my PhD from Jamia Millia Islamia, from basically the AJK MCRC Mass Communication Research Institute. And it was funny that I started my PhD pretty early in my life. I was just passing down from my master's program, and 2013 it was when I had actually gotten into my master's, and selfie became the word of the year, and it entered the Oxford Dictionary. And I was really not a student or a kid who would be, so much like spending so much time on social media, and that got me thinking. That was like, okay, this is a big moment. Now we are also recognizing how people are using social media platforms. And that's when I started to look at, people, how they are posting their selfies. And to my astonishment or dismay, as I call it now, it was very interesting to see all of my friends on Facebook, particularly because that was the platform which was really, really famous back in 2013. So that tells you something about my age too. Now, the very idea that all of them will be posting their pictures, but none of them will look like themselves. Everybody just looks super pretty, all, groomed, looked absolutely stunning at all times, which was a difficult human feat to achieve. But apparently, on a social media platform, when you are actually representing yourself as an avatar, it's not so difficult to do. And that got me thinking into seeing how people create their identities online. And I use the term create very, very mindfully, because it's a construction of who we are rather than how actually we are in personal real lives. And that's when my entire journey for my PhD started. I started already formulating my questions towards my PhD, and I came across this very interesting, transaction between the social media identity and the real physical life identity. And what I ended up doing was a transmedia identity study, and I looked at how people are inscribing themselves on the platform. And while I created this virtual reality, I'm so sorry that I don't have really like a virtual reality, like a head mounting device on me today. And even if I did, I mean, you guys won't be able to experience it as I would have had. So I have a little video for you to play, which I created, which is a small snapshot of the experience that I created. I ended up doing a practice-based PhD from Jamia, which was in unison with University of Westminster, which basically looks at how participants inscribe themselves. And the idea was that I wanted to see, given the affordance of the medium, what all can we do? Because on social media, very small little things, you geotag yourself. So checked into, and then you say where you are at, really, right? You're not physically telling people, but just that, checking into button lets other people know that geographically exactly where you are at, or feeling a certain way. Now we are also emoting ourselves in a certain way, right? So what if I had pushed the interactivity by all means and came down to a medium which allowed for a lot more interactivity? And that for me became virtual reality because it was pushing the boundaries at that point in time. So I ended up creating a prototype using the virtual identity from one of my participants. So I'll just share the video with you. Please let me know if you're able to see this. Okay. Yeah. Is my screen visible? No. Okay. Let me try it again.
Yeah, it's visible.
It's visible? Okay. I'm just trying to. Oh, it's not really playing the. Just give me a second. Okay. So this is what I want you to see. Okay, it's not letting me to, yeah. So if you can hear me, the moment that you enter into this virtual reality realm, basically it calibrates according to your height, how, you'll be seeing the world. And the moment that it is finishing the calibration, it starts and give you a demo of how to use the device, because there are a lot of people who are first time users of virtual reality. So whatever functions that I was using, which was a point and select button and a grip button for grabbing things into the virtual reality environment, I created a little bit tutorial at the very, very beginning. What it also does is that it allows people to understand how the interactions will be in the actual world when they go in. Rising your, user at the end. Then because it was virtual reality, so I wanted to use like a phone, because that is how we jump from, our physical being into a virtual, platform. And this is what I end up creating. So if you were seeing this in virtual reality, you would see that all the green lines that you see were actually nodes between different users that we are part of in the network, in the social media network. And then these were certain pictures from my respondent, and every picture has a semiotic meaning. So all of that is coded into the program. You can select the different codes into the colors, which I sat down with my, respondent, and we were looking at it. So you can select different codes, you can read up about it. There's also a story that you can hear behind clicking those images and why, because these are also very, very phantasmagoric sort of images that he has created of himself. And there's a context because this particular respondent is gender fluid. And we use social media to come out of the closet and talk about his identity. Then there's a second area of interaction, which begins with a camera. And you see the videos that he has posted of himself on social media. So what if you and I were to be present on social media and create, videos of ourselves and how to record it? So I wanted to do something around that. And the idea is that you're not able to see the interaction, but you have to put the camera, you have to take the camera, grab it and put it on your, eyes. That's how you see the camera in real world. So that is the interaction that is being built. So you see that. I'm so sorry, I'm talking continuously because I need to explain. It's a very small snippet of the entire, 8-minute, 10-minute experiential piece that I ended up creating. And then there is a third area that gets activated when you walk over to it. It transports you. And this is the performance area. And you can see that as my head was, going left and right, so is the device. And here you see the avatar of the actual respondent whose entire identity I have tried to circulate on this particular, program. And I have kept a distance of 3 feet between the avatar and anybody who is wearing the virtual reality headset and getting into it. I talked to my respondent that what was the safe space and a comfortable space for him to be talking to a stranger. And he talks back to you and he takes you through, his performance pieces. So these are little things that you end up building, and then, you can fix and choose what are the different things. And now you are seeing that your hands are turning, blue, because that is something that I wanted, that as much time as we spend on the network, we're all becoming more and more like a cyborg, which is, a sort of a cross between a human and a machine. So the more time that we are spending on any sort of network or any sort of, devices and machines, we are turning and interacting more and more like a cyborg than only as a human. And I don't see it as a bad thing or a good thing. I think that's a debate for another time. But this is how the experience piece looks like. I will hopefully be keeping the piece in some museum or art gallery. Let's see, I'm working towards that right now. I'm in that process. But this is exactly how, the entire process sort of runs through. So I hope this gives you an idea as to what I like to work on and what my work sort of revolves around. I'm just gonna stop sharing the screen now.
That was definitely an interesting glimpse into what all can be done when you push the boundary of how people interact with tech. And again, if it's a good or a bad thing, we'll see later. But yeah, with with the new like assimilation of tech into our lives, like it is becoming even harder to get away from it, even if we want to. It's become a necessity these
Yeah.
days. And they figure out some really interesting ways to kind of create a story, and they bring us into it. And we also kind of are trained as interaction designers to create that story for people, for the user to be, so that it's easier for them to understand it, so that it, like a website, it conveys a story.
Right.
Otherwise, it will not make sense.
Right.
So, certain these things we also learn in
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
subjects.
I
Yeah.
think storytelling is at the heart of everything, because I personally believe, because I also come from a domain wherein I was trained as a filmmaker, and specifically so into documentary filmmaking, because Jamia
Yeah.
is all about, filmmaking and media studies, and, you either get into production or you get into research. I somehow did a little bit of both. And before, jumping on to my PhD. And what I realized is that even when you're doing research, even when you're making something, storytelling is genuinely at the heart of everything, because that's how you convey and experience your world with everybody else. So, how do you make sense of your everyday? You tell yourself stories. Everybody tells you stories growing up. So, you remember things like that. And I think that's why most of the disciplines today are utilizing story as the most powerful tool. And then it becomes, how are we pushing and propelling that and getting the results that we want to. So
When you were presenting this, the first thought that came to my mind was I was recently reading about iOS. So not that iOS, but
right.
just how we have Internet of Things. There's something called as Internet of Senses that is coming up very
Yeah.
soon.
Yes.
So if someday this artifact, along with the Internet of Senses technology, so say we can actually smell the perfume that the other character is using, something of that sort.
So they have tried to do like a lot of experimentation around it. Because if you go back, virtual reality is not like a new thing. It's been 4 or 5 decades, old technology. It is just that it is upgrading itself every now and then. Even when I started working on it, I was working with Oculus, and I was working with Oculus Rift, which was a device that had to at all times be connected to a desktop. And as I progressed and as I was, doing different experiments, and I did all sorts of interesting experiments with it, by that time, Oculus came out with Quest, and now this was a model that did not have to be plugged in. And what it did was that it allowed me the space to work around. Now, anybody who was playing around in this, experience that I have created, they can walk without having to see where the computer is. Like now you're not connected with cord, so there is no area that I had to map. However, you do map like a safe area so that people do not sort of, bend over or like, they just do not collide over into walls as they are into the experience because they can't really see the physical world around them while they're wearing virtual reality headsets. But the technology is upgrading, and by the time like I submitted my PhD, Quest 2 model had already come out. So the technology is going to keep upgrading. It was really heavy to wear virtual reality headsets. Now it's become very, very easy to wear them. You play a lot of games. Earlier, there was a lot of times when people would feel blurry or people would end up, feeling nauseous. Now the time limit of being into VR environments has also increased. So I think it's a lot of different things that are happening now. So it's just the affordance of the technology. The lighter it's becoming, the faster it's becoming. So really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, with this, I think we can get into the entire how do we go about it? How do we perceive and create such experiences and incorporate storytelling
Uh,
into
so I
into
think
all.
I'm just gonna do like a little bit because I think we have only limited time slot with us. So what I did do for today was to bring story to the center again. So let me just start presenting. I would like for you to see through the presentation and look at storytelling a little bit differently, maybe.
Sure.
Hope, yeah. Okay. Please let me know whenever you're able to see my screen.
Sure.
Yeah. I would urge people, are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. I would urge people that there are certain portions wherein I will be introducing you to really, really cool projects that people have done to just interact with it and see for yourself and experience for yourself as to what basically helps you navigate it. So for today, what I chose to do was to talk about archiving human-centric stories. And the moment that you say human-centric, you are already talking about stories. And I'll be highlighting about immersion and interactivity through the limited time that we have. Let's see how it goes. So the first and the foremost thing for all of us to understand is that any kind of experience is a story phenomena. How we actually perceive our lives is through a inbuilt story. We talk about, how we woke up today, what happened, what mood we are in, what actually led to that mood. It's also a story. So everything that we witness and we experience phenomenologically, it basically occurs through stories. So stories that is very, very important. Now, something that we need to understand is that why do we tell stories? A, it brings about a very, very coherent narrative of how we are living our lives. So that coherence is required. Otherwise, you forget what you are doing, how you are doing. It's very, very easy to forget data. Let's just say I give you an example that, 17.2 million women in India suffer from domestic abuse, and only 17 lakh 362 women get uh, jobs after leaving their abusive partners. And this is now a hypothetical thing. How many of you remember the data that I just told you? Can anybody volunteer? This was completely hypothetical, but just to check. Does anybody remember anything?
Started with a 17. That's
Okay.
all.
Ended with a 17,
Exactly.
but
So you
million and
forget
lakh.
data, right? Now, what if I tell you a story that while I was a student, I was living in a PG in Delhi, and there was a Didi who used to come and clean our premises. And this Didi often would have a lot of, scars on her body. There would be bruises, there would be scars, and we were really, really young and we were really scared as to what's happening. And then one fine day, me and my roommate, we spoke to that Didi and we asked, what's happening with you? And she told us that she's in an abusive relationship with her husband and she's planning on fleeing away. And she did. After 6 months, when we saw her next, we got to know that she got in touch with an NGO. She had left her abusive husband. He was also given some legal punishment. I'm not getting too much into that case. But the very idea that we did remember her leaving, that entire abusive relationship. And that's a story that I will remember. That's a story that you will possibly also remember. So stories is what builds, personal connect. It basically provides that coherence to the world that you need. This is a story of one person. There are a lot of people like that who are living similar realities, if not the exact same thing. And that is why stories are important. That is why cases are important. I'm sure that all of you must be doing a lot of case studies while building your own particular project. So always remember the importance and the power of any story that happens, right? Now, the next idea is retention, which I just spoke about, that how you retain the story details way better as you would with any data set. And that is why humans, by the very nature and attitude and aptitude, opt for storytelling as opposed to writing, mathematical observations based on data sets. And it provides for emotional connect, and it also helps you to have some reflexivity in your thought process, which is that you sit down and you think and you rethink as to what all went through, and then you connect back to the story some more. Now, this probably is one of the more important slides, and I would like to, take time to talk about this. Now, you need to understand, actually, let me just go here first. There are certain things that lead towards engagement. All of you are in an interaction design program, and I'm sure that most of the things that you are learning to do is to be able to create engagement. Please correct me if I'm mistaken somewhere. But how does that engagement, come about? So it's not only through interactivity, it's also through immersion and presence. And this entire Venn diagram that you have of presence, immersion, and interactivity, which leads, towards engagement, is something that is derivative of the digital platforms that we are all on today. And now I like to just very quickly talk about, how there has been a shift in design thinking. We used to start most of the projects with, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. In fact, this was also the process that I, personally went by while I was, creating my own artifact for my PhD. But now there is a shift because we are dealing with different mediums. We are not dealing with the same exact thing. And now, because there is a different medium, we are trying to put empathy into the very idea of how we look at the world. And I have written it down that now we are shifting from that viewer mentality to a user mentality, which is a viewer and a user, which is very, very important to understand for all of us, because now people like to interact with what they are watching, with what they're consuming, and they want to have a part and a role to play into the technologies that they are consuming today. So having that shift from, the viewer to a user is a very, very important thing. And if your viewer is changing and your technology is changing, so your entire thought process now has to change. Your process towards creating technological output needs to change as well. It needs to shift, at least, if not change entirely. So all of those things are extremely important. I am sure that some of you will at least take the time to go back and possibly do a little bit more rethinking into design thinking and coding empathy. And now the other thing that I would like to talk about is the idea of affordance. Do you guys understand what affordance really is? Anyone? I'm so sorry, I'm not able to see you, so you'll have to speak up. Anyone?
So, I mean, if I could give it in terms of a product, if you see a scissor, there is a bigger hollow portion and a smaller one. So
Mhm.
by default, the structure of the product speaks for itself that this is how you have to use it. The bigger portion is for the four fingers to grip in, and the smaller one is for the thumb to hold.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're talking about a product being intuitive enough for the user, right?
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah, the
Yes.
shape and visual affordance, basically, visual or even audio affordances, which indicate towards a certain action or a certain behavior for the user.
All
That
right.
is, yeah.
Okay. All right. Affordance basically is a very, very simple English term, which means what can you afford? So let's just say I give you a pen and a paper. What can you do with it? You can write things on it. You can possibly draw things on it, right? What if I gave you, let's just say, MS Paint, right? You can still write, you can still draw, but here now you have different colors that you can possibly play with, different shapes that you can also use. If you're a really, really bad, artist, you can possibly take help of the geometric shapes and everything that the platform or the technology is able to provide to you. And let's just say now you have AI systems. I'm sure that you would have seen Midjourney and million other softwares that can create anything on just one keyword command, any image for you, right? And the moment that you do that, they are able to create these fantastical images for you. And that is the affordance of AI, that AI can afford to do that. So as you change mediums, the affordances keep on changing, right? So how much affordance are we talking about when we talk about digital media? And all of us are uh, born digital. Our generation is at the cult wherein all of us have been born with some or the other kind of technological input. We have grown up learning computers as a part of our curriculum back in school. Even if we were not very heavy video game users, we have possibly played one or two, at least in our childhood. I'm sorry if I am generalizing, not meaning to do that, but just trying to give you an example. And similarly, when you get a phone or when you get a website, you have this intuitive, understanding of where to go, what to do, because you've already possibly interacted with something similar, if not the same exact thing. But all of these things lead towards what all can this platform provide to me? And here comes another newer entry, which is immersive media tech or the immersive media technologies, which is your AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended, reality or mixed reality. And they push the affordance of the digital media to a whole new different level. And you need to know all of these affordances even before you can create anything with it, because only then will you be able to push the bubble a little bit more. So you need to possibly give some time, understand how you would like to look at these affordances. It's a very, very short lecture, so I'm just trying to give you triggers to go back and think about, and possibly whichever one you feel that is important for you, that is possibly interesting to you, you could dive back right into it. And then, as I spoke about the immersive media tech, you need to understand that how storytelling is at the heart of it, as well as the very fact that immersive media tech allows you the very idea of interactivity and engagement in a whole new different setup. And you retrieve experiences. If you're reading a book, you're possibly reliving things psychologically. You feel one with the characters that you're reading about. But what if you enter a virtual reality world, a fully immersive virtual reality world, and you are actually playing the character onto which the entire book is written about? So those are the kind of shifts that are coming in, that have actually already come in, and we are now looking at the kind of content creation and generation that's happening extremely rapidly. So look at all of these triggers at your own timeline and see whichever one works for you as, upcoming interaction designers. Now, there are two things that I would like for you to see. There is filming revolution. I'm just sharing just give me a second. So I was being told that I should definitely share the link as well as, also play it here. So I'm going to do both. Just give me a moment to figure it out. So I would like for all of you to see Filming Revolution first. It's a website. It's a website that was created by Professor Alyssa Lebeau. And she's at the University of Sussex. And she created this while the Jasmine Revolution of 2012 was going on. Now, many of you may or may not know about the Jasmine Revolution. This was the entire revolution that came about. I've just shared the link to everybody. This is the entire revolution that came about in the Middle East, specifically. I'm also going to open my internet and try showing you the website. And while I do that, I'll talk about it. Okay. Please let me know whenever you are able to see my screen, because I am unable to see you. So if you open the website, is my screen visible? Okay. So if you open the website, you will enter something like this. And the moment that you do this, you can start browsing. It just tells you that you can start browsing. And there are command prompts that tell you what to do and how to go about it. Now, Alyssa, I'm just giving you a little context because otherwise you'll not understand this. This was created at the time of Jasmine Revolution, wherein uh, from 2009 onwards till about 2012, the Jasmine Revolution in the Middle East sprang up. There was a lot of political turmoil in a lot of countries, including Syria, Egypt, Tunisia, etc. And people were protesting against the then political regime in their countries, and a lot of people were out on the roads and protesting. So what Elisa has done is that she did not go there and make a documentary about the revolution. She actually took in people's interview on what they were feeling. There was a lot of citizen journalism happening, so people were recording on their phones. So you also have recording of people's phones. You have a lot of news media reports. There were a lot of documentary filmmakers who were right there in Egypt and Tunisia and Syria who were capturing the entire thing as it was unfolding. So there was a lot of media. What she has done is that she's created a website for you to look at how people were talking about it. So the moment that you click on any of these, even you hover over any of these dots, you get to know how they're connected with other people or other, keywords. So there's a lot of keyword mapping that has been done. Now, there's one that I would like for you to see, which is role of the artist. The moment that you do that, you get to know other keywords that are coming in. You can go to anyone and it'll start playing the video for you. So I'm sure that if I play the video, it's going to hang, but I hope that the link that I have provided to you, you might just want
أنا
to,
مصادفة من بورسعيد
look at that.
لما كنت بتفرج على المحاكمة في التلفزيون. القاضي أعلن إنه إعدام ل21. فالناس أهالي الضحايا بدأوا يرقصوا. المنظر استغربته جدا، يعني انتوا كمان عندكم ناس ماتت، انتوا ازاي بترقصوا عشان في ناس هتموت؟ دي كانت صدمة كبيرة بالنسبة لي. بعد كده بدأت الأخبار تيجي من بورسعيد إن في قتلى من أهالي بورسعيد. أنا أمي وأخويا بيعيشوا هناك. وجمهور الأهلي كان بيرقص مع كل قتيل بيعلن عنه. قررت إن أنا أروح.
Okay. So what you can do is that you can go to different artists. This is the role of the artist. This is the keyword that I chose. Now, there are different artists who have talked about it, and you can go and watch all of these videos that are interconnected. Now, it makes your life easier because let's just say that there is a lot of political propaganda. There's a lot of things that you would want to know about if you want to genuinely research about the Jasmine Revolution or the revolution of the people that happened in the Middle East. But to be able to sieve through that much data, it's already the website is doing that for you. And you can actually single-handedly look at, singularly, sorry, look at, all of these data sets in terms of all of these connections that it's also doing. So every dot is connected to something else, right? And you can go ahead and look at what exactly do you want to watch. And the moment that you are able to do this, if you go to and show pathways, it also retraces all of your steps back to that same website. So it's also able to do that. So at the end of the day, you also see how you can retrace your steps back to how you have gone into the pathway. So you also get to see how you interact. What were the topics that you were particularly interested in, as opposed to the entire data set that they have given. There are over 100 videos that are embedded. There are actually more than 100 videos that are embedded, and they kept on increasing that. They allowed people to sort of, make it a website wherein they could dump all of the data. Because you can also understand there's a lot of censorship. It's a lot of countries that were, going almost what they were going against their own regimes. They're going against their political regimes. So you need to understand how to create things. Your project might start as something else, but then you need to understand what the real need is and be able to pivot. And the pivoting point for Alyssa is very, very interesting. So it's a website, but what kind of a website is it? What kind of an interaction is she building in? And is it coming from the need, or is it coming because no, I was given a brief to create a website? So think before you go ahead and create something. I think that's like one of the more interesting and important things. The second thing that I'm sharing with you is a game. I just want you to very quickly watch the video. It's just a trailer. You can play the game on your own timeline whenever it is that you find time. Please do play it. It's a very, very interesting one. Uh, so the game is called Bury Me My Love. Do you guys want me to play the trailer for it? Or is it okay if people can do it on their own timeline? Because I think we're left with around 20 minutes. So
Yeah,
whatever.
I think we can watch it on our own time
Okay.
also.
So I'll just talk very, very quickly about why that particular game and why am I talking about it. So there's a lot of interaction because it's a mobile game. And as interaction designers, I'm sure that, there will be some module or the other where you learn how to, create interactions for, more sort of dynamic thing through probably only like a website. Website is dynamic, but in a different way. Bury Me My Love is a BAFTA nominated, game. It came out in 2017. It was nominated in 2018, and it basically captures the life of Syrian refugees. At least it tries to. And it's a story of, like, they could have done it in multiple ways, but what they choose to do was that they took a story of a couple, Noor and Majd, and Majd is in Syria itself, and Noor is trying to find, a safer space for herself. And she is immigrating from one place to another, and she's trying to, and it's a war-torn country. So nobody wants an immigrant. And what are the kind of, problems that she basically ends up into? And as a player, you need to make decisions for her. Sometimes the game basically gives you very, very difficult ethical choices, that should she trust a stranger or should she not. And the idea is that if you are the one who's making the choice, it could actually cause life to this character. It is not like an easy thing. So you feel extremely responsible for the character by the end of it. You feel that sort of immersion, you feel that sort of connect with the character, because one bad decision on your part can cause life or death situation for this character, who's a woman in a war-torn country wherein there's a lot of sexual assault and abuse. There's a lot of, military assault and abuse. There's political riots everywhere, and she comes from a minority identity of an immigrant, which nobody wants. So look at the kind of, interactions. There's one particular interaction in the game that I'd like to just highlight on, wherein uh, the entire game is about, the Noor is talking to her husband, and the husband is the character that you play as, and you make those choices because she's constantly talking to the partner, and both of them are in conversation, and then you are making those decisions. At one point in the game, the conversation just goes off. You cannot reach out to Noor for almost 24 hours. And this happens at a later timeline. So what happens is that you feel the panic as a player because you've been playing this game on and on and on, and have been making decisions, and you almost feel, a lot of people who played the game, they have acknowledged that they almost feel as if their loved one is lost somewhere and they just can't reach out. There's no mechanism to reach out. So it's a very cool interaction that they have built. It's a very thought out process. It's just not there for it being there, right? So that's a very interesting point that I would like for you to at least play the game up till that point, even if you do not like the game later, you know. So I'll just very quickly go to, I'm so sorry, I'm just running through things because it's a little too much. I think I overestimated the time. Okay.
We can go like 15 minutes beyond also. That's not an issue. It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. Now there are three things that I would like to particularly talk about, which is the idea of presence, immersion, and interactivity. Let me just very quickly talk about presence. So presence is the idea, specifically, I'm only and only talking in terms of immersive media tech. And when you're talking about immersive media platforms, the idea of presence changes a little bit. I'm not saying it changes by a lot, but it changes a little bit. Presence is the idea, how do you spatially feel present within that, environment that you are embedded into. There are basically two kinds of presences that we look at. One is spatial, the other one is non-spatial. Now, non-spatial presence is basically psychological presence, even when you are, let's just say, watching a film, right? Or playing a video game. You feel that you are connected to the characters on the screen, right? And you sort of excitedly shout out when you do something great with the character while playing a video game, when you kill the enemy or whatever, or you start imagining yourself with the, lead on a film screen or something. That's a non-spatial or a psychological presence that psychologically you feel one, you feel, more sort of with the character. But then into immersive media environments, you have this spatial presence. You feel that your physical body is present into the same environment as, your other characters or the other environment that you're looking at is. And that is why the idea of presence sort of continues. So there are different, sort of philosophies on presence. I am not getting into that, but to give you an idea, I'd just like for you to go through the Quipu project very, very quickly. It's again a project that, I really, really like. You might want to, I'm also going to play the project for you so that you get an idea as to what the project is about. Okay. So this is the Quipu project. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have just here. I will try sharing my screen as I talk about it as well. Okay. Now the Quipu project was a project that was created, in Peru. It's based out of, yeah. Now, This is again a very interesting project that brings in the voices of the marginalized to the center. And it is again a project that is based on storytelling, people telling stories of what wrongs have been, cascaded upon them by, certain political regimes in question. And who are the listeners of these stories? Because usually when you are, a voice in the minority, you really do not have, an audience, or at least not an audience which is mainstream. So where do you go and talk about these stories until unless somebody makes a film about it? So nobody is making a film anymore. People are now more motivated to do more interactive things wherein you have more engagement. So this is a website that they ended up creating. Kupu basically is a abacus like, apparatus. There are a lot of knots, so you can see the knots that they have created. These are all the stories. So it says start listening. The moment that you go and, click on start listening, it takes you to the stories of the people who were actually forced to have, gone through a lot of abuse in terms of having to remove their uterus. A lot of women were forced to remove uterus as a part of population control.
Se nos ha acusado de que pretendemos, tras una reciente ley que permite la voluntaria vasectomía y la ligadura de trompas, imponer mutilaciones y querer matar pobres.
El presidente Fujimori fue el único presidente varón que asistió a esa conferencia y, sin embargo, teníamos serias dudas en relación a su compromiso con los derechos humanos.
En nuestro empeño para difundir a fondo todos estos métodos de planificación familiar, no para instaurar ningún poder maléfico.
Nadie sabía qué había detrás de todo eso. ¿Por qué? Porque lo que se propagandizaba.
Okay, it's sort of malfunctioning because maybe I have like different things open right now, just doing that. But the very idea of the entire project is that you see that they have utilized something that was indigenous to the people onto whom the entire story is.
Se nos ha acusado de que pretendemos, tras una reciente ley que permite la voluntaria.
So what they have done in the entire website is the entire idea of the website was conceived utilizing Quipu as their main visual design or the identity. Quipu was a technique wherein people would use a lot of ropes, and it would be like an oral tradition. So people would be knotting down the stories, and it would be kept as a financial ledger, but it was also kept for storytelling into the Incan civilizations. So the number of knots you would have, people would be telling those stories again and again. It would cascade down to different generations in the family. So when they actually started to look at the visual design of the entire website, they went back to storytelling devices. They went back to the recorded histories of people, right? Even oral histories are histories at the end of the day. And therefore, this entire, website came up because it was about vasectomy. It was about forced vasectomy, right? Both men and women were forced to remove their reproductive organs so that there could be so-called population control. You would find more about the project once you go and spend some time onto these websites. But the very idea is that when you are looking at such projects, you get to know that it's not only the interaction. Interaction is based on the visual design, the narrative design, the environment design, and how your viewer is going to go about it. But one more important thing, where is the story coming from? So the visual design is heavily based on where the story is coming from, because the story is happening and unfolding itself in Peru. So they have that. Secondly, because it was a political agenda, so they did not want to give away people's anonymity. So you have these recorded calls from people wherein they are relating to you their experience of having to go through forced vasectomies. And all of these calls are recorded. And then those are the calls that you can hear into, that you can listen into. The moment that you basically click on all of those dots on the Quipu that they have created digitally, you can hear the different stories of the different people who have submitted their stories, because there's nobody else who's listening. And they're still waiting for, the fair legal process and the battle to happen. So how else, you go about creating these chunks of storytelling? Whereas, you're also giving interaction. So if at all, let's just say I want to only listen to the stories of women, I can go and do that. If I want to listen to the stories of men, I can go and do that. So you're also giving me the choice, because interaction is what's a choice. You need to understand interaction as a causal relationship. That's something for another day. But then if you understand interaction as something that is cause and effect, you are able to build a better system. Even in research, whenever that you will be having your module on that, they'll tell you about causal research. That's how your quantitative research sort of begins. And the moment that you are able to see causality, how I am affecting something and how that another thing is affecting me, and both cause and effect together create something new. So if I press a button, what's happening? Is that button changing the way that I will now go further into the website, or do I want to just come out of it? Right? So very, very interesting points of entry and exit as we go through. So I'm just doing one project per, item right now, because I don't think that we have the time. So the second thing in the entire thing is immersion. I just talked about the idea of presence. How present do you feel? How spatially or non-spatially present do you feel when you are looking at, immersive media, tech, and design? The second most important thing that we need to look at, or I had to look at as a scholar, was the idea of immersion. How submerged do I feel into the environment that I am currently present at? So to understand this thing, at least in terms of immersive media tech, you need to understand that there are three types of immersion. One is the fully immersive environment, which is your virtual reality environment. Even in virtual reality, we have semi-immersive, but then in a fully immersive environment, you are dislocated or displaced from your actual physical environment. And then you actually enter, psychologically and by your visual design, you enter into another environment. So let's just say you're playing a game on VR and you are playing it in your bedroom, and there's a space wherein, you're standing and you're playing it. You can't see your bedroom the moment that, you have the head mounted device on you. The only thing that you can see is the game environment where you are standing and where, the shots are being fired, or whatever game it is that you're playing, basically. Right? So that's a fully immersive environment. You cannot see anything physical in your actual environment. You can only virtually see that things that are happening. Right? Second is a semi-immersive environment, which was done with like Cave. Cave is a very, very important project that you might want to look at, which was the idea of projecting different, projections onto walls and creating like a 360-degree experience with wall projections. And then you would stand in the middle of it, and then you could interact with different, projections that are happening. So that was a semi-immersive environment. And lastly, you have non-immersive environment, which are usually your desktop-based, games or movies or any other thing. And by immersion here, I only mean spatial immersion. I am not at all talking about psychological immersion. Even when we are, let's just say, texting our friends, we're really, really immersed. Sometimes our lecturers are saying things, but we are like, oh no, this is more important, right? So I am only and only talking in terms of spatial immersion. When you look at immersive media tech, you're looking at the idea of how immersed you are spatially into those environments. I'd very quickly take you through one project, because I genuinely don't think that we have the time. So this is a very interesting one. It's called Inheritance. I would suggest that if in case you're not able to, see through other things, please make sure that you see through this one. It's again a website-based interaction, but it's one of my favorites. I'll give
Where would
everybody.
you?
Sorry?
I was asking a question. Where would you place Apple Vision Pro in the immersion scale? Because it can get very immersive. I've
Yeah.
looked at some people's experiences.
Yeah.
And people say that after a point, they don't realize that they're actually in public with other people. They think that they are on their phone,
Yeah.
but it's actually they're in public
Right.
and they are doing weird gestures.
It's actually the very idea, Devyani, that what I realized, and because I went through that learning curve, because I started working with a very, outdated technology of VR. When I was working on it, it was a desktop connected system of Rift. And it was really heavy, head mounted device. So the moment that you would put it on, after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes time, depending on how strong you are, I believe, you would start feeling nauseous. And it would happen to me quite a lot in the beginning. But after a week, or I believe 2 weeks time, because I had already been spending a lot of time with Rift, my time period to wear Rift sort of increased by 20 minutes, then 25 minutes, then almost like I could cross like 30 minutes. And that is what is happening with media and us. How many of us, in all fairness, can watch the looped, videos of TikToks or like, YouTube shorts or everything without our eyes paining? Whereas if you'll ask our parents, and I'm not only talking about age, it's a thing because we are getting used to it. Our experience of, technology is very different. We are embodying technology. The very idea, I think when I was teaching you guys, there was this lecture that I took wherein I said that, just look at the thumbs that people have. And I mean, I'm not too sure if it's too visible or not. My right thumb is a little bit screwed because, of just flipping things, right? And this is the physical change that, technology is doing on our bodies as well. And psychologically as well, the amount of time, the screen time that has increased. I think we are surrounded by screens. The screen culture has set in upon us in so many ways. We are never parting ways with our phone. Uh, we can do everything, but we cannot be away from our phone, right? The FOMO kicks in the moment that you're away from it, even for like 2 minutes when it's charging and it's dying.
It's
So the
like a
very
body part
talk
now.
about, yeah, Apple Vision Pro. Now coming back to that, there's a context because it's so light and it's so sort of easy to maneuver and handle. And the very idea that they have made most of the interactions in the way in which we are actually living our normal everyday physical lives. That is why when you experience something on the Apple Vision, it's seamless. It's almost seamless. And the more usage that you'll get out of it, the more it will feel as if you're living your everyday life without any, foundation. So yeah, if at all that could answer your question.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I've just shared a link for inheritance. Do you guys want me to share the screen and take you through it, or do you guys want to do it at your own pace? Please let me know.
Um,
Whatever
I think
works.
we can see. I
We
think
can.
we can see it here only. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see that because that's an important one. You might want to, you know, take it to class sometime. Just a second. I'm just opening it on my computer. Yeah. Please let me know once you're able to see my screen. Can you see my screen, please? Can somebody confirm?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is inheritance. This is a website, multimedia, iDoc. I would say it is an interactive documentary sort of a thing. So you can put your headphones on for a better experience. I am not doing that right now, but let's just begin. It tells you to scroll, so I'm just going to scroll up.
Disaster at Christmas. Pan Am Flight 103 had been in the air for an hour, plunged into a small Scottish town.
Please read through the text.
disaster at Christmas. Pan Am Flight 103 had been in the air for an hour, plunged into a small tsunami.
Very difficult if I would have everybody who was in that plane. When it did come to Earth, it hit very hard.
So now you have established that there has been a Pan Am flight that has crashed, and this entire website is dedicated to David, one of the people who lost their lives in the flight. And this entire experience is a story that came from his brother, who basically retold David's story. He was just 25 years of age when he lost his life. So there are different items that were recovered from the, entire flight, the ruins of the flight, basically. And certain things that are the letters or the photographs that David would send back to his brother. So then you have his journal, you
take all this stuff, everything here, and you would point to the box, that his Dave archive thing. He's like, look, if you can make anything out of it, I give you free reign. This is sort of your inheritance.
You can read the story at your own pace whenever that you want to. I'm not doing that right now. I want to go back and possibly, let's just say I want to choose this personal effects.
I would go into his bedroom and I would kind of survey the exhibits in the Dave Museum. And I noticed at one point there was a box.
It's about what is there in that box. So a lot of things that were recovered from the ruins of the Pan Am flight were kept in a museum. So these are the ruins that has been, discovered, and then they were given back to the families who came for the claim. So you could see it. There are stories for all, kinds.
I would go into his bedroom and I would kind of, I think I was realizing some of what he had given to me growing up. I was realizing it around that time when he wed months. And I actually wanted to tell him, hey, I really appreciate.
You could just turn the pages of, the journal and everything. So that's how the entire, thing will keep going. I'm just stopping the experience here because otherwise it will just take us far too long to go through with it. Just a second, I'll just turn my camera on and switch off the experience. Just give me a moment, please. Yeah. So the idea is that when you look at this particular website, now this one is a personal archive. This is unlike most of the work that you have seen by far, which was more political, which had the voices of the marginalized, pulling it back into the center and, making people watch it and view it, right? This is more of a personal archive that gives you, a really, really interesting insight of the life of somebody who was just 25 years of age. This is an entire storytelling session that was being done by Dave's brother. And then the entire thing has been recreated into a website format by another director and producer. I'm just forgetting the name. I'll have to very quickly look that up. I'll do that later. I think it was by Michelle Misner, sorry, yeah. So it was Michelle Misner who basically, wrote and, directed it. So it was something to be looked at. And I think that's what, makes it very, very interesting that we are getting into a space wherein even personal stories are making their way into how we view the world or how we, want to memorialize. So you have seen that how there are Facebook accounts or Instagram accounts that are being memorialized. When somebody passes away, you can just memorialize it. Similarly, imagine doing this for someone who has lost their life so young, who was super talented, and there's a family that is grieving. And this is not only an example of like a personal archive for an individual, but this could be done for a lot many people, right? So imagine going through their things and telling a story. And by the end of the website experience, you feel as if you were the one who were going through their things personally, as opposed to just sitting behind like an unengaged user who's just looking at a documentary. You're not unengaged anymore. You are more engaged because you're interacting with each of these things. Because I was playing it, so possibly you did not feel it. But the moment that you actually flip through the pages of the journal that there is, right, you feel as if you're reading through the diary of somebody who has lost their life. So it's a very, very interesting, place to begin storytelling. And interaction is what sort of propels it forward. So that is why, I feel that interaction is something that we genuinely need to look at. And there are like tags, there are different things, there are, cassettes that Dave has recorded. And then, you could listen into it, you could tune into it. So please go back and look at how people are also utilizing a lot of interaction in terms of, what they're doing and in terms of website building. So where all can you create interaction? So uh, please look at that. The last idea for the day, and I leave you, I promise. I'll not be those strict, professor today. So the last idea is the idea of interactivity, which I am sure that you know more than I do. You are the budding interaction designers. So when you talk about interactivity, what do you understand? What does interactivity mean to all of you as, designers?
Something that is like it has to be a two-way thing, a two-way communication.
Okay, all right.
There has to be some feedback from the other side.
Yeah, totally cool. All right. So majorly interactivity is that it's feedback and feed forward. Whatever you feed back into the system has to propel forward some effect, something. And that effect in turn also changes the way that you think about what you have interacted with. You either like it, you hate it, you dislike it, you want to know more about it, you're just curious. So interactivity is again something that, is a very, very important idea. And when you are dealing with immersive media tech, particularly, you would feel that there is a long learning curve. It's not as easy because even when I was trying to build, a project for my PhD, it was a practice-based PhD. I could have just made a documentary. I could have also ended up making a website. And I can tell you honestly that there was a point wherein I wanted to build an interactive website. And then I gave up on it. And then I just propelled my idea that no, I want a transmedia environment and I want to actually achieve it using virtual reality as opposed to any other digital platform. And when I did that, there was a long learning curve because I just knew how to look at images in a 2D format. What do I do with this 3D figure now that can look at me while I'm walking into this format? How do I make the hand movements go about? How do I keep it natural? Because if I at all think about whimsical things, people will never be able to recreate those moments. They will not be able to navigate through the space that I have created. So I needed to be possibly as, uh, you know, near to how human body interacts normally, as opposed to making it more whimsical. For the camera moment, if you do remember the first video of my work that I had just shown you, you have to walk to the camera. You can either do it by the arrows so that it takes you, or you can actually walk physically and go till the the point wherein the camera is. And then you have to pick up the camera, bring it to your, forehead. The moment that it touches the HMD device, which is in like 5 centimeter the distance of the HMD device or the head mounted device, that's when the camera ka video gets activated. It does not get activated because if the camera is just kept, no camera will just start playing anything. You need to be able to look at it and play something from it. So that is the interaction that I thought of building. I could have also done it like you could also view it on a viewer, but I didn't want that. I wanted something which was a little more, dramatic and how people actually, bring the camera to themselves and then do it. So there are a lot of interesting, points of interaction that you build. Or the very idea that the interaction between the screen that you have, wherein you have like different sort of, images of the particular respondent. And by the way, that respondent is also from NID. He's from NID Ahmedabad. And he used the entire social media to sort of, interpose his story of coming out to the people and how he looks at his gender fluidity. And it was very, very interesting even for him to sit with me while I was making it. So it was a lot of co-creation together. That's a term that I borrow from Ananda Kapoor, who worked on creating co-creation and document IDOC on Indian domestic workers. It's a very cool project. Please do check it out as well. It's called Ashiana, if I'm not mistaken. So please do check that out. It's very interesting to see how people are talking about these points of interaction, bringing it back to storytelling and creating engagement. So if at all you are looking at interaction, please do not look at it, in a void. Always look at it in a network of things. And I think the more that you know about this network and the more that you can actually derive from each of these, different, things in the network, the better your project or whatever it is that you're working on becomes. So that will be it for today. I hope that there are some curious, interesting, answers or questions or, some things that you would want to share. And I'd be very happy to hear it all out.
If anyone has any questions, they can also drop it in the chat. We can ask them also. In the meanwhile, I also had a question that when we also design a lot of things, we create prototypes for our projects. There's a lot of user bias that can come into our heads when we picture a certain, like, for example, we wanted to create something for the elderly. We were imagining something like a very old, frail person who cannot, use technology really well. But there are certain people who break that stereotype. So, so certain biases that come into our heads, like how do we navigate through them, and how do we, like, if you've experienced something like that,
All
how
right.
did you overcome?
So, Devyani, it's more of a question towards research. The better that you research, the more data that you get. And by data, I'm not only looking at quantitative data, because the moment that you say data, people instantly think of numbers, right? I'm also talking about, what are the tests that you are conducting. There are a lot of interesting experiential study and experimental studies that you can do, and include as many people in your sample and different people in your sample. Like, look at it, like defining is very important. Who do you want to study, right? Because you can't just go ahead and take, let's just say, an interview of 20 or 30 or 100 different people from similar categories. But who's your user? Who are you defining things for? So define first of all, and then go down to your sample. Who is my sample? Sample is very, very important. The moment that you fix those two things, the moment that you fix a research question, the moment that you fix, your objective, and conduct a more thorough research, I think user bias to some extent, not all. I mean, we can never have like a completely unbiased sort of, framework. That's just humanly impossible, even if you collect like a lot of data, because it's never representative. It's just representative. It's never the exact thing, right? The more the research, the better the research, the more refined the research, the better your results are going to be.
You, any other question if anyone has?
Not a question in particular, but overall, all the interfaces or the websites that we've been through today. Having said that, it is very unfortunate that such incidents have happened worldwide, which have been documented, but it's also very interesting how they've tried to document it. I would actually like to understand how to still maintain a humanitarian angle to. I mean, there were a few platforms that really made us feel that, okay, we ourselves are going through the remains or the products or the artifact that were used by somebody's disease right now, but still to somehow maintain that humanitarian angle.
I think, okay, that's a very interesting question because, it can be answered on multiple levels. One is that you have to be respectful. Whose story are you telling? Are you doing, justice to that story? Because when I speak of Bury Me My Love, and it's a BAFTA nominated game, by the way, in the gaming category, a lot of time the criticism comes that it is also in a way watering down upon the entire issue of the Syrian refugees. So it's a very thin line to tread upon because you cannot be representing the entire ecosystem. It's humanly impossible. There are so many different stories. It's only a story about, adult, woman who is constantly talking to her husband over the phone, and that's how you're, getting into the story. But what about the children? But what about the, elderly in the community? But what about, let's just say, differently abled or specially abled people? So you cannot possibly bring in different, facets. You can choose to work with one or two. But once you decide to choose to, work on the one or two facets that you genuinely want to talk about, you need to do extremely well in terms of your research. And what has come up very recently, I think, in terms of arts and arts practice is the idea of co-creation. So have those people, maybe give them some sort of autonomy over the kind of content that you are pushing and propelling. There are a lot of uh, ethno centric, documentaries, ethnographies as they call them. So ethnography is like a research device, like it's a research methodology. But then there are a lot of ethno cinema that has been created wherein people go to, communities wherein they want to talk about a particular problem. They record with the people there playing different roles. They take upon, the community takes upon different roles as actors. And then they also sit down on the editing table. So while I am the director, I am not the only decision maker. I am not the only one who is, choosing what to cut and what to put, so that you as an end user is looking at only how I would want you to look at a certain thing. In that way, I'm restricting. So there's a very cool film. It's called Indefensible Space. It's a documentary. It was done with UN. Manish Sharma is the director. And it's a very interesting one because what he did was that he went to the slums in Mumbai, and he had shot this entire documentary about, the lack of public toilets, because there are no toilets in the homes. You can only use the public toilet. So there are 500 plus families. There are only about 7 to 8 toilets, at least. That's what is shown in documentary. He went there. He basically took a workshop with the women in the slum and told them how to handle camera and gave the camera to them, like the small handy cams I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the professional, camera equipment. It was a prosumer camera, the handy cams. And they have recorded the stories that they wanted to tell about the difficulty that they face specifically during their menstrual cycle, specifically during nights as a woman when, it's all dark and they have to go through the alleys and there's a lot of catcalling and other things that happen, and the unhygienic conditions into which they have to actually go and, use the washrooms. And then he also made them sit down on the editing table. And then people chose, there's a shot that he did not want to keep in the film, which was of this really, really filthy toilet. It was really full to the brim. And the women said that, no, please keep that shot because that's the reality. That's the everyday reality that we face when we are going and using the toilets. So the idea is that give your co-creator the autonomy, reach out to them. Co-creation may or may not be possible into every scenario, but then look at, what are the other devices, even, at the stage of research, if you can include more and more people, if you can include more and more voices, and being respectful. Those are the, few things that you need to have for sure. And I think then your moral compass guides you.
we're already running over time, but we can take one more question.
Okay.
Is somebody from the participants, is Rishabh, would you like to ask this question yourself?
Okay. Uh,
So his question is mainly related to that
Mhm.
whenever he does research, it's a lot of things that are involved and he often gets distracted. So how can he actually focus over what certain extent of, okay, these are some tips that you can give him to improve his research process.
Okay.
And yes, so how to concentrate or focus and not divert himself from his research process while studying.
If you are diverting, that means that you're a curious mind, because you are then also indulging into a lot many things that are happening in and around that topic. But there comes a point wherein you need to funnel down certain things, wherein you need to have that clarity as to exactly what it is that you're going to achieve. And there are various ways of doing so. Sometimes it is, research oriented. If I give you a very, very research specific answer or a research foot forward, then I'll tell you that define your research question. The moment that you have one strong question, and I'm only talking about having one question, not multiples of it. If you have one umbrella question, that is where you can basically see how to go about it, because once you basically put it down, you now know what all encompasses it. You will not sort of get frayed away here and there. Then second thing is that sometimes you're not only doing research. It might be a personal project, it might be a project that is coming from some sort of experience and or inspiration. Then go down and look at what were the main emotions that you felt, which are the more important things that you would like to talk about, and retrace your step back and then frame your question. So here it's more about the experience that you want to share. So instead of framing the question first, relive that experience, go back to the notes, see what is it that you would want to really, really talk about. What is that one thing that sort of propelled you to even think about the topic in the first place? So that is something that you need to, look at. Somebody has asked, yes, it was Hitain. The person who was asking this, it was Hitain. He is currently now working in Delhi itself. So yeah, I guess NID connections.
And I think finally we have somebody who's based out of Chandigarh. So he's suggesting a book named Where the Action Is by Paul.
Totally. There are a lot of interesting works that are being done all over the world. And iDocs is certainly becoming popular, but so are other mediums. So you need to always be on the lookout, because you need to see where the technology is shifting. Rather than what's working now, you need to all be futurists in terms of, usage of technology, and see what's evolving right now. So I would just suggest that as budding designers, always keep a lookout on the trends of how people are utilizing things, how people are retrieving things, how people are liking to interact with things, and what technologies are they, going to be using. The moment that you do that, I think, you are framing yourself for a better position in future. So yeah.
That's enough questions. And we can close the session now. It was an amazing session, as other people have also said. And we definitely look at different ways of representing stories and even different layouting methods and how to combine visual aesthetics with data, and how do you even sort through all that data so that it is presentable for the other person to see and understand. So that definitely in our interaction, as well as information design, and even in other departments like the our our other departments that are there, we actually have to look at how do we make it easy for the user to understand, and how do we classify certain data and make it easy for people to consume, basically. And so we definitely got a lot of inspiration, even though those some of them were very dark and hard to go through. I'm sure those websites have made it much more consumable, just like a documentary would. And people would not have touched those topics on their own. But because there is a clearer path now, like in the first filming revolution one, people can actually see what all they're doing. So definitely our job as interaction designers is to make that path clear. And yeah, so
You all
Sunaina,
make it so seamless for all of us as end users. So yeah, thank you for that. I'll look at some really cool projects coming out from you, Devyani and Sunaina, for sure. Thank you for
Thank you.
organizing this and having me here. I wish and hope that you had at least some interesting inputs to take from, and possibly just be interested in the field that you are in. I think that's the propeller. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
for this session. It was very interactive, very informative. We hope to see you again at some point in any of our future
Someday,
sessions.
maybe at our campus also. Would like to have a live session someday.
Yes, Mumbai is closer
Let's
to
see.
Bangalore, so
Yeah,
why not?
Bombay is closer to Bangalore. Yeah, that's true. Okay. All right, Devyani, Sunaina, and Pallavi, thank you for organizing this. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Bye-bye.